Hello viewers, welcome to Kids Auto and Truck Repair. Today we have a 2007 Dodge Sprinter with a 3.0 liter. In this video, I'm going to share with you how to remove and replace the intake manifolds. I already removed the turbocharger. I have an engine sitting on the pallet here. I'm going to show you how to remove that. So I'm going to bring you along so we can remove and replace the intake manifolds. I'm going to show you the removal process. The installation process is the reverse process of the removal process. So now let's go to the engine and do that. So we got the turbo removed. So now we're going to remove the intake manifolds. I'm going to remove the upper radiator tube first. We're going to undo these bolts over here. Now, I'm removing these intake manifolds because we have a Sprinter van here on the lift that has intake manifolds that need to be replaced. The intake manifolds on that Sprinter have flaps that are stuck. So this engine came out of a Sprinter van that we had over here in the shop a little while ago. This engine has two dead cylinders. This cylinder and that cylinder has low compression. So that's why we removed this engine. That's why we took it out of the van. Now the good thing is, although this engine has two cylinders that are dead, but we can still use these intake manifolds. So I'm going to remove these intake manifolds and put them on the other Sprinter. So we're going to disconnect these hoses, these fuel hoses. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the engine that's inside the van. Now this is a lot easier because this engine is out, so it's a lot easy to do. But it's basically the same process when the engine is in the vehicle. So I'm going to remove this little holder over here that holds the fuel return lines. So now I'm removing the fuel filter. I'm going to remove the fuel filter and its bracket. So I'm undoing all the screws that hold the fuel filter on the intake manifold. So now the fuel filter can come out. Okay, so I removed the bolt that goes over here and there and here. Okay, so we're gonna get the fuel filter out of the way. So I'm gonna remove this breather here. We're gonna disconnect this just like that. And then I'm going to disconnect this hose over here. Okay, so we're gonna get this hose out of the way. All right, so now the next step is gonna be, I'm gonna remove this fuel rail, this passenger side fuel rail, and these injector supply tubes, these injector fuel supply lines. I'm going to disconnect all the wires on this side all the electrical connectors. So the injector electrical connectors, the camshaft connector, and then I'm gonna get the wiring from this side. I'm just gonna fold it back towards the driver's side head, and then that will give me enough room to remove the intake manifolds. So you see this wiring here. So I'm gonna have to lay it on this side. So let's disconnect the electrical connectors over here. So the first thing we're gonna do on the passenger side head is we're gonna disconnect these injector fuel return lines. I'm gonna grab this locking piece and pull it up, just like that. I'm gonna do the same thing over here, just like that. Okay, I'm gonna get this fuel return line out of the way, and then I'm gonna disconnect these fuel supply lines from the fuel rail. Man, this is so nice when the engine is out. I wish it was this easy and this roomy when the engine is in the van. So now we're gonna disconnect the injectors over here. When you disconnect this nut, you have to be careful not to break the fuel return tube on the injector. All right, so now we're going to disconnect the electrical connector of the injectors. So there's a tab over here that you press. So you press this tab and then you pull. Okay, so this tab over here, you press it and then you pull. All right, and then we're going to do the same thing on this fuel rail pressure sensor. All right, and then we're going to undo these two bolts so we can remove our fuel rail. Now everything I'm doing, the installation, once again, is the reverse process of the removal process. So if you want to replace your fuel rail or your fuel injector or your injector lines, this is how you do it. So this is how you remove them. You just do the reverse process to install the new part. Okay? So we're going to get this out of the way, and then our fuel rail is going to come out. So here comes the fuel rail. I'm going to get it out of the way. So now I'm going to disconnect the camshaft sensor, and then there is a little bracket over here, a little metal bracket that holds this wire down. Okay, it keeps it down on the valve cover. Okay, as you can see now the wiring, okay, can just be pushed up like that. And then we're gonna undo this little bracket over here. So this little metal bracket holds the wire down on the valve cover. So right now this entire wiring can just be pushed back like this. So now the next step is gonna be disconnecting our glow plugs. So this over here is the glow plug wire. I'm gonna grab pliers and then pull this up just like that. The glow plug is disconnected. We're gonna disconnect this one here. Same process. And then third glow plug over here. Okay. So now our entire wiring can be flipped towards the driver's side cylinder head. And as you can see, now we have room around the intake manifold. Okay. So we're gonna push these wires out of the way. I'm gonna remove this fuel line that goes between both fuel rails. Okay. So right now, this wiring can just be pushed to the side like that. Okay. Very good. So now we're gonna remove this metal bracket that goes on the swirl motor. Now we're going to disconnect the electrical connector of the swirl motor. Okay. So that's good, we are making progress. So at this point, our intake manifold can come out. We're gonna remove the turbo pedestal. The turbo pedestal has 4 bolts that hold it in place. I'm going to show you the bolts once I remove the pedestal. So I got all the bolts for the turbo pedestal undone. So now we're going to remove it. Before I remove the pedestal, I'm going to show you all the intake manifold bolts we're going to remove. And then I will remove the pedestal. And then we're going to undo the intake manifold bolts. So this is the turbo pedestal. I undid these 4 bolts. So now the pedestal should be able to come out. Okay. I mean, if all these bolts are completely free, the pedestal should come out. So right there, here it is. Okay. So we're gonna get the turbo pedestal out of the way. So now I'm gonna show you the intake manifold bolts that we're gonna remove. Now we're gonna remove this bolt over here, this one, this, and that, and this one here, and that one over there, and then there's another one that's hiding. Don't hide, buddy. That one over there. And then we have the same one on this intake manifold. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we have one more over here, and then there's another one over here. So after we undo all these bolts, then we're gonna remove the bolt over here. Okay, this, that, and then there's another one down over here. Okay, so these 3 nuts have to come out. Actually, let's start by removing these 3 nuts first, and then we're gonna remove the intake manifold bolts. After that, the intake will come out. So we're gonna remove the intake manifold nuts first. So we're gonna remove this one down here. And then this one here. Then third one right here. Okay, so we got these 3 nuts removed. Now we're gonna remove the intake manifold bolts. All right, so I got all the bolts loose. So now I'm gonna remove them. Now, some of these bolts are longer than others. The top bolts are short. The bottom ones are the long ones. Let me show you closely here. You'll see that these ones are the long ones and these ones are the short ones. So the short ones go up here and then the long ones go down here. Okay, so that's good. Let's remove all these bolts. So after we get all these bolts removed, our intake manifold is going to come out. So we got all the bolts removed. So now I'm gonna use my pry bar and rock the intake manifold back and forth like that. Okay, so my intake manifold is moving. So just like that. The intake manifold is coming out. Just like that. So we're gonna rock this back and forth slowly and gently. We're gonna lift as we go. Now I'm not worried about the gasket because we're gonna replace the gasket. Okay, so here comes our intake manifold. So here's our intake manifold. So the intake manifold is removed. We are good to go. So here's our intake manifold. We got it removed. Okay. So here's our intake manifold. So I'm going to take this intake manifold to the bench, and then I'm going to show you why we removed this intake manifold. I will tell you the reason why we removed the intake manifold, and then we're going to wrap up this video. Once again, the installation process of the intake manifold is the reverse process of the removal process. So now I'm going to take this out of the way. As you can see, we have two sets of intake manifolds. This is the intake manifold that we removed from the engine that was on the pallet. I'm going to show you the problem. So on this intake manifold, these flaps are stuck. Now on this side, these flaps are moving a little bit. They are binding. But when you look at this one over here, these flaps here are stuck. You see that? So if you try to move this lever, nothing is happening. So these ones here are stuck. But if you move this, these ones are opening and closing. So this is the problem. This is why we got these intake manifold out of the other engine. Now let's test these ones. So when I do this here, I hope you can see right here. You see how this one is moving? And then let's check the other side. Check this side. I'm sorry for the glare. I'm sorry. I hope you can see. You see that? Okay, so these flaps are not stuck. So I'm gonna clean off this intake manifold very well, and then we're gonna install this intake manifold on the van. The van we are working on is right here behind me. So this is the van that we are working on. We put an engine on this van, but since the engine came from the junkyard, after we started it, we had intake flap trouble codes. I did some tests, then I realized that the engine that came from the junkyard had intake flaps that were stuck. So I removed the intake. Now I'm gonna get the intake manifold off of the old engine, which has low compression, but the flaps on that engine are not stuck. So we're gonna install those intake manifolds on this engine, then we should be good to go. I'm gonna leave this right over here. This is how you remove and replace intake manifolds on a Mercedes or Dodge Sprinter with a 3.0 liter. I hope you liked the video. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like the video, give it a thumb down. But if you do, you gotta tell me why so we can make better videos in the future. If you have any comments, questions, criticism, leave them in the comment box. Thanks for watching. See you next time.